The room gasped before the glass even hit the marble floor. A crash of water echoed through the chandelier-lit banquet hall, and suddenly, silence gripped the air like a noose. Every head turned as ice cubes skidded across the floor, landing near the edge of the 5-tier birthday cake shaped like a luxury yacht. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stood frozen, drenched, my designer dress clinging to my skin. My father's face twisted in rage. She thinks she's better than us, he bellowed, arms still outstretched, veins bulging, trembling with the aftermath of the throw. Just because she owns a fancy apartment in Manhattan, she's forgotten her roots. Whispers spread like wildfire. A few guests awkwardly turned away, pretending not to have seen. Others stared wide-eyed, cameras twitching in their hands, unsure if this was some drama stage spectacle for the party or an actual family implosion. Spoiler, it was real. All of it. No rehearsals. No script. I looked around the room. My mother stood still in her glittering blue gown, not a flicker of shock on her face. My older brother, Joel, sipped champagne and smirked, whispering something to his wife, who chuckled behind her hand. Even my cousin Damien, whose son's birthday we were supposedly celebrating, looked more amused than mortified. I could feel it. That same old humiliation they'd used to keep me in line growing up. Only this time I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt livid. I said no. I said calmly, voice steady despite the fury boiling beneath. That apartment is mine. I bought it. I pay the taxes. I'm not handing over my home so Joel can impress his clients or so you two can refinance your damn lake house. My father took a step forward, his hand raised again, not to hit, but to gesture to the crowd. This is what happens when you give a girl too much freedom, he declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ungrateful. Arrogant. Thinks she's some Manhattan elite now. But let me tell you something. Daniel. A new voice cut through the tension like a blade. My father's face dropped, his words halting mid-sentence. My heart skipped once, then slammed against my ribs. Everyone turned. The ballroom doors had opened. Framed in golden light stood a man in a tailored black suit, polished shoes tapping quietly across the marble as he entered. He was tall, composed, and magnetic, like someone who didn't walk into a room but arrived in it. And I couldn't breathe. Mr. Langston, my cousin gasped, elbowing his wife, who promptly dropped her phone. No one needed to say his first name. Everyone in the city knew him. Aiden Langston, CEO of Langston Holdings. Worth $18.7 billion, last Forbes update. Ruthless investor. Private as hell. Untouchable. And a walking straight toward me. The man my family had spent years pitching ideas to, begging for funding, trying to impress. He was heading right for the soaked, shivering woman with mascara trailing down her cheeks.
Me.
My father looked between us, his mouth twitching. You know him? Aiden didn't answer. He stopped beside me, removed his coat, and draped it gently over my shoulders. Then, in front of the entire room, he placed a hand on the small of my back, leaned in close, and said the one thing that collapsed the room into chaos. She's my wife. The silence after Aiden said wife wasn't peaceful. It was jagged.
Sharp.
Like glass shattering quietly inside every smug face in the room. I heard my aunt gasp. My cousin nearly dropped her wine flute. And Joel. Oh, Joel. His expression twisted into something between shock, disgust, and raw disbelief. But it was my father's face I focused on.
Pale.
Hollow. As if someone had yanked the soul right out of his chest and tossed it into the nearest gutter. You married him? He choked out.
Since when?
How, why? Aiden didn't flinch. He turned to face the crowd now, his hand still firm against my back. Since last year. We had a small ceremony in Big Sur. Private. Off-grid. Just how we wanted.
Lies.
Beautiful lies. Not all of it, but close. We weren't legally married. Not yet. But we were close. Emotionally bound. And more importantly, strategically united. What mattered now was the illusion, what they believed. And judging by the color draining from my family's faces, the illusion worked. She never told us, my mother hissed, stepping closer, her tones suddenly soft, calculated. You could have invited us. We're family. I turned slowly. Family? I repeated. You mean the same people who voted me out of my inheritance at 19? Who told me I'd embarrassed the family because I worked as a fashion assistant instead of marrying into a law firm? Or the ones who laughed behind my back when I bought that shoebox apartment without a man's help? The crowd grew awkward. The DJ had stopped the music long ago. Even the event photographer lowered his camera, sensing this wasn't the kind of story they wanted in next month's society pages. You didn't invite us to your wedding? Joel said with mock injury, hand on his heart. Wow, what a sister. But sure, go ahead and act like we're the villains here. I didn't invite you, I said sharply, because you treat me like I'm disposable. You think your status excuses your cruelty. Aiden stepped in. Let me be very clear, he said, voice calm but lethal. I know exactly what this family tried to do to her. I've seen the fake investment deals you offered her. I've seen the emails, the manipulation, the emotional warfare disguised as advice. You tried to break her spirit. No one breathed. I didn't just fall in love with her, Aiden continued. I watched her fight to survive in a system rigged against her, by you. She clawed her way out of your shadow, and when she got a little sunlight, you demanded she give it back. That stops today. My father shook his head. You don't know the full story. She abandoned this family. No, I said, stepping forward. You threw me out when I refused to co-sign Joel's second loan. You called me selfish, ungrateful. You threatened to sue me if I didn't hand over the condo Grandma left me. You left me no choice but to cut ties. You're still bitter, my mother said coldly. Clearly. No, I whispered. I'm free. The words landed harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed to say them until I did. And right then something changed. Not in them. They were too far gone. But in me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. 2 hours later, I was sitting barefoot on the edge of a penthouse balcony, a silk robe draped over my shoulders, the chaos of the party behind me. The city glittered beneath us, like it owed me something. Aiden leaned against the railing beside me, sleeves rolled up, tie loose, watching the night with quiet intent. He hadn't said much since we left the party. He didn't have to. The silence between us was earned, built on nights like this. Nights where the world tried to break me, and he just stayed. Still shaking, he asked gently. I nodded. A little. He slipped a glass of water into my hand. You handled them, he said. Exactly how you needed to. I exhaled slowly. I didn't even plan on going to that party. You didn't go for them, he said. You went for you. He was right. When the invitation first arrived, gold-trimmed, embossed with Damien's gaudy family crest, I tossed it in the trash. But something pulled me back. Something said, go. Show up.
Be seen.
Not for revenge, not for pity. For closure. I looked over at Aiden. Do you remember the first time we met? He smirked. You mean when you threw coffee on my shoes and stormed out of the interview? I laughed despite myself. You were arrogant. You were late. My train derailed. You still made it. That's what impressed me. That was nearly 2 years ago. I was a wreck back then. Working 3 side gigs. Barely sleeping. I had just escaped my family's financial chokehold and moved into a crumbling studio that smelled like expired milk and regret. Aiden was interviewing assistants for a new philanthropic division at Langston Holdings. I didn't know who he was at first. I thought he was the HR guy and I hated everything he said. I called him elitist. He told me I had a chip on my shoulder. I left, furious. 3 days later, he sent me flowers with a note. Still elitist. But I like your fire. Coffee? We met again. This time, I didn't storm out. I grilled him about his companies, his ethics, his past. He asked about mine. Not the version my family told the world. My version. No one had ever asked before. That's how it started. Not with grand gestures or chemistry, but with mutual defiance. a refusal to let the world dictate our worth. I remember thinking, I said, if one more man offers me advice wrapped in condescension, I'm going to scream. And then I did something worse, Aiden said. You listened. He smiled. Exactly. Later that night, after he'd fallen asleep beside me, I lay awake, replaying my father's words. She thinks she's better than us. What they didn't know was how hard I'd fought not to think that. I wanted to believe we were the same, that they'd change, that someday I could be proud to call them my family again. But you can't force love into places it won't grow. And as I stared out at the skyline, one truth pressed into my bones. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something bigger. The message came the next morning, wrapped in venom, dressed in civility. Hey sis, can we talk? Just us. No drama. Joel. I stared at it, the sarcasm practically dripping through the screen. Aiden was already at his desk across the loft, eyes scanning a report, coffee untouched beside him. I debated whether to reply. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part, the more dangerous part, wanted to see how desperate my brother had become. I texted back. 1 hour. Midtown. Park bench behind the old skating rink. Come alone. Joel showed up in a navy suit that didn't quite hide the panic beneath his eyes. His smile was off, too forced, too thin. You looked expensive, he said, gesturing at my coat. You look unemployed, I replied. He sat beside me, pulling gloves off one finger at a time. Okay, that's fair. I deserve that. What do you want? Joel looked around, lowering his voice. Look, I know things got heated, but I came to say I'm sorry. I turned to him slowly. You threw me under the bus at the birthday party. You laughed when Dad humiliated me in front of over 200 people. I didn't know he was going to do that. You didn't stop him either. His jaw tensed.
Fine.
But this isn't about the party. It's about the apartment. I scoffed. Of course it is.
Joel leaned in.
I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The investment firm I started last year? It's gone. My partner bailed. The debts are piling up. And Dad, he used your name on some of the early filings. My blood ran cold. What did you just say? I didn't know, I swear. He used your social security number. He forged your digital signature. I only found out when I tried to file for liquidation, and the lawyers flagged it. Joel, are you telling me you've been listed as a silent guarantor on a failed investment scheme? My throat went dry. If this goes public, Joel continued, it's going to wreck your credit, your reputation, maybe even trigger a legal review of your property assets. That apartment, your accounts, they'll all be scrutinized. I stood up. And you didn't think to tell me before now? I didn't know until last week. I took a slow breath, the cold air burning in my lungs. So, let me guess. You came here to beg me to make it all go away. You want me to cover it up. Fix your mess. Joel didn't deny it. I'll do anything, he said. Just make it disappear. I stared at him for a long time. Then I pulled out a small flash drive from my coat pocket and dropped it on the bench. What's this? He asked. Copies of everything. The emails. The fake documents. The timestamps. The trail leading back to Dad. You thought I wouldn't find out? Aiden has an entire team of forensic analysts. Joel's face turned to ash. You already knew? I smiled coldly. I knew 3 months ago. I just wanted to see how long you'd pretend you cared. That night, I sat beside Aiden in our kitchen, sipping tea while he reviewed the press draft. They'll go after you, he said. Once this hits, your family will try to spin the narrative. You'll be the villain. Let them try. You sure you're ready for this? I looked up at him, eyes steady. I'm done hiding. I'm done covering for people who bury me and call it love. He nodded, then passed me the final draft of the press release. I read the headline. Langston Holdings confirms internal audit reveals fraudulent activity targeting CEO's wife. Legal action pending. My past was now a headline, but so was my power. The courthouse smelled like cold coffee and stale panic. Reporters pressed against the barricades. Cameras clicked like 1,000 tiny lies capturing their favorite kind of theater, family drama dressed in wealth. Inside, my father sat beside Joel, both in charcoal suits, both avoiding my eyes. Their lawyer, a smug man named Trent Kavanaugh, smirked at me as I entered. I didn't smirk back. Aiden was already seated, calm, unreadable, but I could feel the tension in his hand as he brushed his fingers across mine. Today wasn't just a civil fraud hearing. Today was reckoning. Ms. Walker, the judge began. You filed to clear your name from forged business documentation, asset fraud, and unauthorized co-signatures tied to your familial connections. You also allege that the misuse of your identity caused reputational harm, psychological distress, and placed your personal holdings at risk. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, I said. And you've submitted a forensic report?
Yes.
Along with digital evidence tracing the falsified documents to my father and my brother's firm. The judge nodded and turned to my father. Mr. Walker, do you deny these claims? My father stood, his expression unusually stiff. I do. My daughter's making a spectacle. She's embarrassed this family with her choices. She's weaponizing her new status to humiliate us. Your Honor, our attorney interrupted. With respect, this isn't about humiliation. It's about accountability and identity theft. This isn't personal, it's criminal. Joel leaned into the mic. She's overreacting. She always does this. She dramatizes everything to play the victim. A flash of heat crept into my chest. I stood slowly. I was 19 when you made me sign my first loan guarantee. You said it was a college fund for Damien. You said it would bring the family closer. I turned toward the judge. But nothing ever brought us closer. It was always a transaction. Every time I succeeded, I owed them more. If I failed, it was proof I deserved less. And when I finally broke free and found someone who treated me like a human being instead of a wallet with emotions, they couldn't stand it. That's why we're here. There was no shouting, no gasps, just a long, solemn quiet. Because truth didn't need to scream. It just needed to stand. A week later, the ruling came down. The court cleared me of any ties to the fraudulent LLCs. The apartment remained mine. The damages would be evaluated in a separate proceeding. My father's license as a financial advisor was suspended pending review. Joel's firm was officially dissolved. But I didn't feel like celebrating. Instead, I went back to the place I hadn't seen in years. An old pier just off the Hudson, where I used to sit with a notebook and dream of a life that didn't revolve around pleasing people who hated me. Aiden joined me. You look quiet, he said, sitting beside me. I feel quiet, I replied. You won.
No.
I survived.
He took my hand.
What now? I turned to him slowly, a small smile forming. Now I live. Not to prove anything. Not to escape. Just to live. Months passed. I never spoke to Joel again. My father sent a letter, half apology, half excuse. I never responded. My mother never called. But something strange happened. People noticed. Other women, other daughters, messaged me. Strangers wrote. I saw the article. Thank you for speaking up. I didn't know someone like you could go through that too. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't just a wife to a billionaire. I was a woman who said no loud enough for the whole damn world to hear, and meant it. And in that quiet strength, I found something my family never gave me.
Peace.